3 years ago, Benjamin Osei buried his wife. He stood there as the coffin was lowered into the ground, listening to the hollow sound of dirt hitting wood. That sound followed him for years. He thought he had accepted it. But on a quiet Tuesday evening, at a red traffic light, everything he believed shattered. Benjamin turned his head casually and froze. In the car beside him sat a woman with Amara's exact face. The same sharp cheekbones, the same thoughtful eyes, even the same unconscious habit of tapping her fingers on the steering wheel. His breath caught. Benjamin Osei didn't panic. He didn't scream. He just stared. Because he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He had buried that face. And yet, here it was. Alive. The traffic light turned green. Benjamin Osei should have driven home. Instead, he followed her. Street after street, deeper into neighborhoods he didn't recognize. Benjamin tried to convince himself he was being irrational. But his heart refused to listen. Was he chasing a stranger? Or was he chasing the impossible? The woman drove into an older part of town and pulled up in front of a modest house with a faded yellow door. Benjamin stayed in his car, watching her step out under the streetlight. It was Amara's face, but it wasn't her life. That night, Benjamin Osei didn't sleep. Because if this woman wasn't his wife, then who was she? And why did she look exactly like the woman he had buried? The next morning, Benjamin Osei stood in front of that yellow door. His hand hovered in the air before he knocked. He wasn't ready for what might open it. When the door finally creaked open, the world seemed to slow. There she stood. Same eyes, same face, same presence. "Are you Amara?" Benjamin asked, his voice barely steady. The woman studied him carefully. "No," she said softly. "My name is Hannah." Benjamin Osei felt the ground shift beneath him. Hannah, not Amara. But how could that be? Because the face staring back at him was identical to the one etched into his memory, the one carved into stone at the cemetery. And in that moment, Benjamin knew this wasn't coincidence. This was something buried deeper than grief. Benjamin Osei sat across from Hannah at her small kitchen table. Morning light filtered through thin curtains. The room was quiet, but tension filled the air. Hannah wrapped her hands around a mug of tea and looked directly at him. "I'm Amara's identical twin," she said. The words echoed in Benjamin's mind. Twin? Impossible. Amara had never mentioned a sister. But Hannah continued. "She never knew I existed." Silence fell heavily between them. Separated at birth. Adopted in secret. A condition of survival. A truth buried for decades. Benjamin Osei realized that the woman he loved had lived her entire life missing half of herself, and never even knew it. And now that truth was sitting across from him. Alive. As Hannah explained her childhood heart defect, Benjamin Osei felt a cold realization forming inside him. Surgeries, specialists, genetic complications. He swallowed hard before asking the question. And Amara? Never knew she might have the same condition? Hannah slowly shook her head. No. She never knew. That was the moment everything changed. Benjamin Osei's mind raced through endless possibilities. If Amara had known about Hannah, if she had been tested, if doctors had caught something early, would she still be alive? The weight of what if pressed down on him harder than grief ever had. Because now this wasn't just tragedy. It was a truth that came too late. That night, Benjamin Osei sat alone in his car outside Hannah's house. The engine was off. The world moved around him. But inside, everything collapsed. For 3 years, he had told himself there was nothing he could have done. Now he wasn't so sure. Tears fell silently, the kind he had refused to shed at the funeral. Benjamin Osei wasn't just mourning Amara anymore. He was mourning the secret that might have saved her. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, his shoulders shaking in the dark. Because sometimes the hardest pain isn't loss. It's the possibility that things could have been different. And that possibility can haunt you forever. When Benjamin Osei returned a few days later, Hannah didn't ask questions. She simply said, "Tell me about her." And he did. He told Hannah about Amara's laugh. Loud, contagious, impossible to ignore. He described her terrible singing in the shower and the way she believed everyone deserved a second chance. Hannah listened in complete silence, absorbing every word as if she were rebuilding her own reflection through his memories. For the first time, Benjamin Osei spoke about his wife without shutting down. Between him and Hannah, something extraordinary happened. Amara wasn't a ghost anymore. She became a shared story, and in that sharing, the pain softened. Months later, Benjamin Osei stood once again at Amara's grave. But this time, something was different. He wasn't drowning in anger. He wasn't searching for answers. He simply stood there, breathing. "I'm learning to live again," he said quietly. The wind brushed through the grass like a gentle reply. Benjamin Osei understood now that loving Hannah as Amara's sister did not betray her memory. It honored it. Because grief doesn't mean holding on to pain forever. Sometimes it means carrying love forward in a new shape. And for the first time in 3 years, Benjamin felt something close to peace. One quiet evening, Benjamin Osei sat across from Hannah in her living room. As she thought deeply about something, her fingers began tapping lightly against the table.
Top, top, top.
The exact rhythm Amara used to make. Benjamin noticed instantly. For a brief second, his heart tightened. But then something unexpected happened. It didn't hurt. Instead, it felt warm. Hannah looked up and caught him staring. "What?" she asked gently. "Nothing," Benjamin replied with a small smile, because he finally understood. Hannah wasn't replacing Amara. She was proof that love leaves echoes, and some echoes are meant to comfort us. One evening, Benjamin Osei found himself stopped at another red traffic light. The sky was painted in deep shades of orange and gold. 3 years ago, this kind of moment would have triggered panic. But now he simply breathed. He didn't look at the car beside him. He wasn't searching for ghosts anymore. Meeting Hannah had changed him. Benjamin Osei had learned that grief doesn't disappear. Transforms. Love doesn't end when a heartbeat stops. It changes form. It moves forward. It waits patiently for us to accept it again. And as the light turned green, Benjamin drove on. Not chasing the past, but finally at peace with it.